This is Eric Albert, and I'll be discussing human resources role in conflict resolution for Management 346. Some of the common functions of HR professionals in relation to conflict resolution will be one of the topics we'll be discussing, as well as the steps involved in resolving conflicts. And finally, we'll discuss a system to reduce conflicts in the workplace. Some of the common functions that you'll experience as an HR professional will be employee complaints. Additionally, you'll be dealing with some labor relations, possibly some allegations, and lastly, some workplace injury. In dealing with employee complaints, you could be exposed to allegations of unfair treatment, unfavorable working conditions, disputes between co-workers and managers, which I could probably say would be the majority of them. You also could be tasked with explaining the codes of conduct for your organization to make sure everybody understands what that is. You'll be responsible for offering some solutions and compromises or a little bit of mitigation in dealing with conflict resolution. And you could also help determine what the appropriate disciplinary action, if there is any disciplinary action, would be for an employee or a manager who violated some things inside that company. And as with everything, document. You'll maintain records of the events. With labor relations, you're basically the liaison between the employers and the labor unions. You can help implement labor relation programs within your organization. You can also settle labor disputes to help prevent things that could lead to a strike or litigation later down the road. You can deal with bargaining agreements and assist with employee relations, dealing with contracts, wages and salaries, benefits, and also pensions. You could also be involved with negotiating terms and help parties reach a decision when union reps and employees cannot agree as well. With allegations, the first step in resolving claims of discrimination, harassment, and unfair treatment, as HR, you are that first step. You should be involved, and hopefully everybody understands that they should come to you to assist with resolving those claims with discrimination, harassment, or unfair treatment. You could be involved in investigating the claims, basically a cradle-to-grave approach to find out where it started and how it came about, and also establishing that validity of the claim to make sure it is actually a valid claim. Also, you could be part of interpreting equal opportunity and anti-discrimination laws to make sure that your employer is in compliance. It's probably part of the reason that you're there is to make sure that you keep your bosses out of hot water, and HR has a big part in that. You can also recommend or offer remedies. And then some of the employees that have legitimate complaints that you've investigated and established that they're valid, you can help them with filing formal charges as well. Workplace injuries. You play a role in preventing potential conflict if an employee sustains an on-the-job injury. You want to ensure that employee notifies HR first of the incident, so the Human Resource Office can open a workers' compensation claim. But you do want that to resonate within your office and to be that first step to take care of that. Counteract some potential lawsuits by ensuring the employee receives medical attention and compensation for their injuries and lost wages. It is a proactive approach when it comes to workplace injuries, and you want to make sure that you're involved right away, and then you're doing everything that you can, because neglect can be very costly if you don't take care of it right away or have a systematic process in place to deal with workplace injuries. Next, we're going to move on to some steps to resolving conflict. The first step is to discuss the situation in a respectful manner. You wouldn't think that needs to be said, but sometimes discussions can get heated and a lot of personal bias comes into them. So it's really important that you treat everyone with respect in a calm manner, removing some of the emotion to de-escalate the situation and make sure everybody is treated with respect. You want to be specific. Why are you there? If you beat around the bush, then nothing's going to get accomplished. So it's important that you're very specific of what you want to accomplish. You also want to discuss how that conflict impacts the employee or yourself, additionally, as well as the group and the project, because everybody might have a different perspective of how the conflict in your organization is impacting them, or how it's impacting the organization as a whole, or the project or task that you might be working on. So getting that out in the open will help eliminate some of those barriers that you can run into. You want to ask for the specific cause of the conflict. As I was saying before, with being specific, you need to know what the conflict's about. And if nobody wants to tell you, then it's really hard to fix something if you don't know it's broke. So it's important that you get the specific cause of the conflict or the catalyst that caused it to get to this point where you have to implement resolving this conflict. And you want to ask for the solution. You're not the know-it-all in that situation, and the employees or the employers that happen to be involved in this should be able to offer some sort of solution and to get a little bit of buy-in and brainstorm of better ways to do something that can help avoid the potential conflicts from occurring to begin with. And then lastly, which I feel is the most important, is you have to agree on the action to be taken. It's really important that you take some sort of action, but you also assign tasks and delegate to ensure people are held accountable and for their piece of the puzzle, and that everybody's on board and agrees to take action, because if one person doesn't, then the conflict's probably not going to go away, and then you're going to go back through this whole cycle again to try to resolve it. Some of the systems to reduce conflict in the workplace, training obviously is a big part. You want to be able to provide some kind of conflict awareness training, because identifying some of the conflict early can help avoid it. Some of the warning signs or triggers. Communications training. It's important that people are able to talk, that they don't stick their head in the sand and they're scared to say something. So you want to be able to find a way for people to articulate the problems that they're having, and they can communicate not just laterally across the organization, but up and down the chain of command as well. You want to provide your managers and some of your key people some negotiation training. It makes no sense to have conflict resolution if you have no experience or no sort of training in that area, because it's probably going to be doomed from the start if you don't have some tools to start with. And manager awareness. Managers need to know that they can't solve every problem, and they might not be the best equipped to solve the problem. They might be too invested in that conflict to begin with. So it's important that they're aware that there are other avenues to take care of conflicts, but also giving the managers some of that negotiation training, ensuring that they can communicate and let them know how to recognize conflict to begin with. At some point, you might want to involve a neutral third-party intervention, not just the human resource officer, but maybe an outside company to come in and help if the conflict is serious enough that it is affecting your organization. You might need to get that extra set of eyes from somewhere else to come in. They can assist with conflict coaching, conciliation, and they're neutral conflict resolving sessions. So they're an outside party that has no invested interest in the success one way or another, but they just want to be able to get the facts out in the open and help come to an agreeable term. And basically they help facilitate that discussion and get it going. A big piece of that puzzle is to ensure that you have a supportive infrastructure. You don't need support just from the bottom, but you need support from the top. You need the upper management to be invested in trying to ensure that the conflicts in the work area has a mechanism to be resolved, and that they're taking the time to be invested in it and show that it's important to them, so the workers understand that it's important as well. Additionally, budgeting is a concern. It's not free to do everything in conflict resolution. There might be minor budget things. You might need something as simple as gigantic sticky pads pens or markers, or depending on the mechanisms that you're using to resolve the conflict, there's going to be costs, so you should be able to forecast for that and make sure there's some money set aside to do it. You want to make sure that the values are in alignment with the organization. Making people understand what the values of the company are can help with that conflict resolution, because everybody understands where you're coming from, what set of values is that company operating off of. And then you can help guide that conflict to ensure that the end results, or the agreeable results, are in tune with the organization's value system. You want to offer some form of confidentiality, because people are less likely to come to you with problems and, again, stick their head in the sand if they feel that their name's going to be blasted across the company as the person that said there's an issue. So you want to be able to allow a person the confidentiality to know that they're not going to be blasted across the company, and they have a mechanism to report something without being told on later. Sometimes you might want to develop an administrative center. If your company's large enough and you seem to have a lot of conflict, you might actually have to dedicate some resources to it, whether it be an administrative center or a conflict competency committee, whose sole purpose is to help diffuse some of those conflicts and to mitigate or mediate conflict resolution scenarios and situations. And additionally, you want to have a feedback system. Just because that you successfully resolved a conflict doesn't mean that that was the greatest way to do it. You want to be able to get the pros and cons of what worked, what didn't work, what things that the employees or managers would like to see next time that there's a conflict, or things that you could have done better. You want to see what kind of return on the investment is. If you're investing this money and the time to resolve the conflict, but it's costing more than it would be for a payout or something else in the work center, you want to make sure it's worth it. So there's a monetary or a metric measuring that should be done to see how those conflicts are actually saving the company some kind of money, so they are getting a return on their investment. With advertising, if nobody knows that there's a center to resolve conflicts, or there's a system in place to resolve conflicts, then chances are it won't get used. So it's important that you go out there and you advertise it and let people know that it is available, which might help stop people just straight going to the EEOC or filing complaints or hiring lawyers or starting lawsuits if they know there's actually a mechanism, just because sometimes people just want their voice to be heard. And there might be some incentives to help resolve conflicts. Financially, it's cheaper to resolve a conflict internally than it is through the court system. So a little bit of monetary incentive, or some days off, or some other things for helping to successfully resolve that conflict in the workplace, or come up with new ideas of how better to resolve conflicts, might be a good approach. So briefly, what I discussed with you was the common functions, the steps involved in resolving the conflict, and a system to reduce conflict in the workplace.